What's going on, everybody? It's Joel here, and today we're going to be doing the review of the R.A.D. trainers. Okay, so the R.A.D. trainers. These guys came out at Wodapalooza this year. If you were there, then you got the early access to purchase them. I was not there, so I had to wait a week after for the online orders to start. And during that week of waiting, I tried to stay away from hearing about these shoes as much as possible. I didn't want anything that people were saying to influence what I would have to say about the shoe in the future, but it was literally impossible to stay away from these shoes. I mean, everywhere you went on social media, these shoes would pop up, and it was always good things. Everybody was saying just non-stop good things about these shoes, nothing bad about them at all. So to me, that threw up a red flag, because I mean, there's got to be something wrong with them, right? No shoe is perfect, and I went on my quest to find out what was wrong with these shoes. And I gotta be honest with you guys, there's not a whole lot wrong with them. I mean, they're not the perfect shoe, but they're a really, really good shoe. But before we get into that, let's talk about the actual construction of the R.A.D. ones. Okay, so the upper is comprised of a few different materials. We have a suede type material, which I'm going to assume is a vegan suede, considering the sustainability aspect of these shoes. And that suede spans pretty much all the way from the quarter panel all the way up through the toe box. There's a little panel right here, right on the toe cap, and then all the way back around to the quarter panel again. And then on top of that, we have a mesh material that's on both the lateral and medial sides of the shoe. And then on top of that, there's this PU overlay to give it a little bit more structure in between that suede material and that mesh material. The upper as a whole is very flexible. It's comfortable. It moves with your feet well. It's breathable. There's no hot spots throughout it. I really like it. And it's nothing fancy or anything, but it just fits really well. At the back of the shoe, the midsole cover rises up and gives you a little bit more support at the heel part of the shoe. There's a little part that sticks out for handstand push-ups, but this material is not like your typical hard plastic TPU. It's kind of like a gummier type material. It's still pretty rigid, but it's not as slippery as, say, the heel clip that you'll find on the Metcon series shoes. The midsole covering pretty much spans 360 around the shoe, except for the toe cap right here, or the toe bumper. And that houses the Swell Foam midsole, which is a 70/30 sugarcane-based midsole / fossil EVA midsole. So sugarcane is a sustainable material, and while they're not 100% yet, I think it's a step in the right direction. Now, going back to that midsole cover, I think that this is my favorite design part of the shoe. It just kind of has this organic look to it, and it's something that you don't really see on shoes nowadays. I think shoes look really, really technical nowadays, and then the style aspect is kind of taken out of them. Now, taking a look at the outsole, it's a predominantly flat outsole with a recessed tread pattern. The ridges are a little bit on the rounded side. There is a toe bumper in the front, and then there's an area for the rope to be channeled through when you're doing rope climbs or sliding down rope climbs. And in the medial side of the shoe, there's a slight little ridge here, and that's on the midsole cover, and that is presumably to help you climb up the rope. The heel contact area on this shoe is pretty wide. It actually sticks out quite a bit further than the upper on both the sides and the very back of the shoe. Though there is a slight rocker to the heel, I would still say that this is a very flat feeling shoe. This drop on this shoe is 6 millimeters. There's a slight toe spring, but it's very easy to get grounded with these shoes on. So inside of the shoe, you're gonna find an anatomical sock liner that is obviously removable. The sock liner itself is a really high quality one. It's got really good underfoot cushioning. It molds to your foot very well. It's breathable. And in the 3 weeks that I've been using these shoes nonstop, there's hardly any wear to it. So I really like that they spent a little bit more time or money on the sock liner of the shoe. Another little detail that I like about the shoe is just the lining that's inside of the shoe. It's like a really smooth, soft material. It doesn't catch your socks or anything. It's really easy for you to put your foot inside of this shoe. And then I do like the tongue as well. It's nice and cushioned. It doesn't move around. It's got like a booty-like design to it. It's secured on both sides and it doesn't shift around on you. So I really like that about this shoe. The laces are nothing special, but they stay tight, so I can't really complain about them. And then the lace loops actually secure down to the sides of the shoe, kind of like fly wire, and that gives you a really nice customized fit when you lace these guys up. And finally, the weight for a men's size 10 is only 12.5 ounces, so that strikes a good middle ground between something that should be a little bit more stable and something that you can easily move around in. For a first shoe, I think the build quality of the R.A.D. ones is excellent. It feels like they've been making shoes for a long time, judging by just how well built this shoe is and the quality of the materials that they used. When it comes to sizing your R.A.D. ones, I'm gonna recommend that you go with your normal training shoe size. So I got these in my normal size 10 and I feel like they fit my feet perfectly. The way that the toe is shaped actually conforms very well to my Morton's toe. I don't have really wide toes or anything, but I do have a bunion on my right foot and I don't feel like the metatarsal area on these shoes is tight at all. There's no hot spots or anything, and it bends and moves very well. The only instance where I'd say that you should probably go with that half size up is if you have really wide feet or you have a really wide set of toes. And that's where I think the toe shape of the R.A.D. ones might be a little bit detrimental to you. But otherwise, throughout like the whole shoe, I don't think that they're narrow at all. I think they fit very well. Like there's no arch support in these shoes. It's pretty flat throughout. And I think they're gonna fit a variety of foot shapes very well. Just keep in mind that you might need to size up because of the way that the toe is shaped on this shoe. Okay, so of all the things that the R.A.D. ones do right, the most standout feature is the fact that they are super comfortable. You can wear these to the gym comfortably. You can wear them at the gym comfortably. In the last 3 weeks that I've had these shoes, I've been wearing them nonstop, just beating them up because they're really easy to wear. And that transfers to like the running performance of these shoes. They're not the lightest pair of running shoes, but I think if you're looking for a shoe that you can comfortably run and do the CrossFit workouts that you want to do in, and then you can take as like a daily casual runner, I think the R.A.D. ones are going to be that shoe for you. The Swell Foam midsole is springy, it's responsive, it's not overly mushy or anything like that. It's not super duper soft, but I think it's good and comfortable for most of the running that anyone's gonna be doing like on a week-to-week basis. If you're like a hardcore runner, this is definitely not gonna replace your normal running shoes. But I think if you're like a CrossFit runner, I think that these will do just fine. I think these shoes are just as good for plyometric movements as they are for running, if not better, because you know they are training shoes after all. The midsole on these is cushioned yet still responsive. Like I said before, it's not soft or anything, but it does cushion your impact from like jumps very well. So if you're doing box jump rebounding in these, the response is excellent. You can jump on and off the box, no problem, without any kind of misses. I didn't have any issues tracking my double unders in these shoes, and that's something that I have an issue with when I have shoes that are a little bit too soft. Doing burpees in these shoes was excellent. The actual toe bump around these is really noticeable when you're trying to go up and get down. And I never noticed that my feet got too lit up or tired when I was using these shoes. So that's a huge plus when you're looking for a shoe for plyometric movements. The one area that I thought that these shoes wasn't the greatest in was for rope climbs. I think for a shoe that doesn't have a whole lot of design influence based for rope climbs, I think they still do pretty good, but overall as like a rope climbing shoe, they're not the greatest. I think they do a better job channeling the rope downwards than they do to grab the rope going upwards, but I felt like I did have to put a little bit more effort in trying to wrap the rope around my shoe in order for me to get grip. And while I do think that they're not the greatest rope climbing shoes, I think they're plenty fine for the majority of people doing rope climbs in the first place, because you're not doing rope climbs every day. And if anything, you just need a shoe that will withstand the rope well, and these shoes do a really, really good job. There's virtually no wear on the inside of my shoe. There's a little bit on this midsole part, but otherwise, I was very, very surprised to see how these handled like just the actual rope burn from doing rope climbs. Okay, so when it comes to stability, I thought the R.A.D. ones were more than good enough. That's probably not their strongest suit, but I think for pretty much anybody's day-to-day trainings, these are going to be just fine. So I haven't had a really heavy squat day. I think I've squatted up to just like about 80%, and I used these shoes just fine. I didn't really notice any kind of rocking around, any kind of instability. Even though they are a little bit more on the softer side, I do think the wide contact heel does a really good job in keeping you planted. The drop on these shoes, it's not really that noticeable, even though it's 6 millimeters. And some people will see these shoes from the side and they'll be like, oh, the toe spring's kind of high. But really, when you get under these or get under a bar inside of these shoes, you're not gonna notice any kind of instability in the forefoot when you get planted for a lift. Obviously, these are not gonna be the greatest 1 rep max deadlift shoe, but I was still able to take these up to 545 with no issues. And that's probably about 95% of my 1 rep max deadlift. Now, I'm not saying that these are gonna be a PR or the perfect deadlift shoe, but they're certainly adequate enough for you to be pulling heavy weights in. For Olympic weightlifting movements, I thought that once again, these shoes were more than good enough for anybody's day-to-day training. Obviously, they're not gonna be, once again, the best 1 rep max shoe, but that's not what they were designed for. I thought that cleans fared a lot better than snatches did with these shoes. Getting grounded, landings were very solid in these shoes. Catching in a nice front rack position was pretty easy to do. For snatches, I felt like I was catching more forward than I normally would, but that's probably just due to the more flexible forefoot in these shoes, plus the outsole design being a little bit more rounded. The one area in terms of stability that I thought the R.A.D ones could use a little bit more help in is their torsional rigidity and like lateral stability. I felt like doing unilateral movements in these shoes like lunges required a little bit more effort because of the way that the shoe wants to flex outwards, and plus the way that the outsole is kind of rounded. It allows your feet to move side to side maybe a little bit too much. So finding that balance when you're doing like a lunge requires a little bit more work than with something with more of a flatter outsole and more torsional rigidity. But otherwise, I feel like that's a pretty minor complaint. Overall, I think the R.A.Ds are gonna handle just about anybody's day-to-day lifting just fine. So when it comes down to it, I really tried hard to find something glaringly wrong with these shoes. And the truth is, I couldn't. These are one of the best day-to-day training shoes. And I say day-to-day training shoes because they're probably still not the best like competition shoe, though I think that most people are going to be able to compete in these just fine. I still think something like the Metcon 7 is probably a little bit better for, you know, a CrossFit competition, or the Strike Hazes are a little bit better to lift in. They're a little bit closer to these in day-to-day wearability, but I still think that these overall are probably the most comfortable and most versatile day-to-day training shoe. Now keep in mind, I still don't think that they are perfect. Like I said, they're not the greatest rope climbing shoe. Torsional stability could be a little bit better. And plus this suede is a freaking dirt magnet. And I mean, I've gotten used to it at this point, but going forward, I probably won't buy the lighter colors of this shoe just because of how dirty the suede gets and how impossible it is to keep clean. But overall, I think the R.A.D ones are a really good first attempt at a training shoe from a brand new company. These shoes retail for $150, which is obviously more on the expensive side, but once you factor in the responsible manufacturing of these shoes, I think it will pay off in the future. So if you guys have any questions about the R.A.D ones, feel free to leave them in the comment section. Make sure that you guys are subscribed to my channel for all the latest reviews. Hit that thumbs up button if you like this video, and thanks for watching, guys.